afternoon, all.
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon. Welcome. The time is 1:30 p.m. and I hereby call the July 12, 2023 meeting of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals to order. By the way, if you want an agenda, it's on the front there. Feel free to help yourself. I have some general announcements. We have 4 members present, plus 1 on Zoom. Our board members total 7. If you feel your petition needs to be heard by the full board, please let Shelley know as soon as possible, and we will table that petition until the next meeting, which would be in August, when we have a full board member presence. The Area Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is being held in person and virtually in the 4th floor council chamber of the St. Joe County City Building with Zoom video and phone conferencing options available as posted on our website. Regarding public comment, we will first ask for any comment from you sitting in the chambers, then call on members of the public attending remotely. If a member of the public attending remotely wishes to participate in the public comment portion of the meeting, they should indicate this by using the raised hand function in Zoom and/or by messaging the host in the chat function. Please, when you come forward, please clearly state your name and address for the record. We ask that board members state their name when making a motion and second. Lastly, please silence your cell phones so that they do not disturb this meeting. Thank you. May we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Hawley?
Yes, here.
Mr. Velman?
Here.
Mr. Ritzma?
Here.
Mr. Roush?
Here.
Mr. Schaefer?
Here.
4 members present, 1 on Zoom.
Thank you. May we have the reading of the first item on the agenda?
"1711 Lincoln Way and 1701 Lincoln Way, and 4 unaddressed vacant parcels to the east across Bass Road, and 112 Bass Road, and 112 Bass Road, and 112 Bass Road, and 112 Bass Road. Owner, Real Foods LLC, Stephen and Anna Gill. Requested action, special use, special exception use per section 4.08 to allow manufacturing without outdoor storage in the C Commercial District for a slaughterhouse use, as tabled. Zoning C Commercial District, Osceola.
Yeah, this is Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff. So the petitioner is the contingent purchaser of this property. It's currently the DC Meats butcher shop in Osceola. So they would like to continue to operate a butcher shop there and also do some on-site animal slaughter. They want to keep the option open to sell the meat produced at this facility off-site as well as on. It sounds like it's primarily going to be on-site, but if they're going, since they want to potentially sell some off-site, they need this special use. Whereas if it was all going to be sold on-site, that would be a manufacturing retailer, which is already permitted in the C Commercial District. But since they need the special use, you will be making a recommendation to the Town Council of Osceola. And this is what the property currently looks like. This is the rear of the property. This is where construction is proposed for the slaughter element of the business. which is shown on the site plan here. Staff recommends that the special use be sent to the Osceola Town Council with a favorable recommendation, mainly because the heavy federal and state regulations related to the slaughter of meat and the sanitary processing of meat would ensure that there aren't any significant adverse impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. Additionally, the size of the property will really limit the volume of this operation, and since there is no sort of outdoor storage permitted, that as well would mitigate any impacts on surrounding properties. Turning to the 4 state law criteria to consider when making a recommendation on a special use. We find that the proposed use will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community due to the federal, state, and local regulations related to slaughter and meat processing. We find that the proposed use will not injure or adversely affect the use of the adjacent area or property values therein, due once again to federal and state regulation related to humane slaughter and sanitary meat processing. This will ensure that there are no significant odors perceptible beyond the property. As well, the prohibition on outdoor operations will ensure that the only sound really generated would be during the unloading process, which will be brief. And all of that will need to be screened from the adjacent residential properties by type C landscaping, which at the very least would require a 6-foot solid fence between the slaughter property and the residential properties. Third, we find that the proposed use will be consistent with the character of the district in which it is located. It's really, again, due to the size and the remaining space on the property. This is really going to be accessory to the retail portion of the business. Therefore, it is consistent with the commercial corridor in Osceola, and we don't expect that the intensity and the impact of the use would be much greater than a number of other commercial uses which are permitted by right in the district. Fourthly, we find that the proposed use is compatible with the recommendations of the Osceola Town Comprehensive Plan, which calls for commercial uses on this property. And I am happy to answer any questions. We recommend that this be sent to the Osceola Town Council with a favorable recommendation. Thank you.
Anyone on the board have a question of Sean?
I do. Sean, originally, didn't we table this because the town of Osceola wanted more time?
Correct. They had a number of questions for the petitioner related to just what exactly they had planned, what impacts it might potentially have on the surrounding area. So that did take place at their town council meeting last month, and they were comfortable with it moving forward to get your recommendation today.
Okay. I'm not really clear what's going on across Basswood Road to the east.
So those are properties that are involved in the same deal where that's contingent on this special use being granted. There's nothing presently proposed for in terms of any sort of slaughter or retail use on those properties currently. But if the town were to approve the special use, then that could potentially happen in the future.
So, I'm not sure that completely answered the question. It has more to do with, that way those lots are controlled and they're zoned the same. Is that the idea, or?
So it allows the petitioner the option of expanding over there should they see fit in the future, yes.
Okay.
Seeing none, could we have the petitioner? Would you please come forward, state your name and address? You have 10 minutes.
My name's Chad Thornburg, 7831 West YZ Avenue, Schoolcraft, Michigan, 49087. I was here mainly to answer people's questions. I think Sean has done a good job of explaining everything of what we're trying to do. So I'm mainly here to answer people's questions if they have any concerns, anything like that. And if there's nothing, then I'll be good.
Does the board have any questions?
I do. The animals that will be on site for the slaughtering, I'm assuming they're going to be alive
When delivered,
when delivered. So then I guess the follow-up question I have is what's the scale of the number of animals being delivered?
I mean, the way that I was looking at it, because I obviously don't want to limit myself by saying a number, but the acreage itself is not big enough to have a tremendous amount of pigs, cows, sheep, or anything like that. So I would like to maybe start at like 20, but I don't want to say that that's my top number.
And the kind of animals that you're-
Mainly pork and beef. That's the main of it.
Would there be outdoor pens,
No.
or they'd be all indoors?
They would be unloaded off the trailer and directly inside the building.
What do you do to, what, can you maybe elaborate on facility as far as what do you do regarding any odor?
Odor, I mean, the odor is will be 100% controlled by the USDA. So like if you have a plant that doesn't smell good or something that goes bad, they will shut it down because odors will attract pests, it'll attract rodents, it'll attract everything else. So you have to make sure you have that standard. Plus, the big thing to keep in mind here is that we want to keep DC Meats running as a retail store and selling out the front door. So it would be very poor in our judgment to have something that smells and trying to sell product out the front. So to us, not only is there going to be rules by USDA put in place, but there will be our own rules so we can make sure that we keep selling product.
Question. So it's gonna be an actual federal plant?
It's going to be USDA.
So
Yes,
you'll be able to export into Michigan?
correct.
so
Thank
that-
you. Go ahead.
what's your intent for the off-sale or the off-site selling of the meat?
Just not to limit myself to, I mean, like by USDA, the standards of USDA would allow you to sell into all 50 states. Like you'd be under that. Now, if you're not doing that and we're from Michigan and we have lots of restaurants and lots of things by us and stuff, why wouldn't we want to provide some of what we feel is the best quality beef out there to whomever wants it?
Thank you, thank you. We're going to open this up to the public at this time. Is there anyone in the present that would like to speak in favor of this? Please come forward. Is there anyone on, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead. Thank you. Name and address.
This is speaking in favor, correct?
Right.
My name is Andy Rutten. I live at 55304 Cedar Trail. That's in the Osceola area. I'd like to speak in favor of this special use petition. I've been a customer at DC Meats for many years now. I've found them to be a great establishment, your old-fashioned local butcher shop, very clean facility, very friendly facility. I love the variety of foods they have there. And for me, what's important with food selection, the quality of the food, is the freshness. Is it local? Was it processed recently? And is it minimally processed? DC Meats does a very good job with this. I believe that this special use will enhance that, if anything. And I look forward to the opportunity to continue to buy new products there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor from the audience? Is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak in favor of this? Seeing none, is there anyone in the room that wishes to speak against this? Please come forward, state your name and address. Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak against this?
Go ahead and unmute yourself, F. Stephen, and present your question.
I'm just a little concerned about the smell.
Mr. Stephen, before you proceed, can you please provide your full address for the record, please?
11544 Lincoln Way West. I am just west of DC Meats.
Did you get the name also?
No.
What was your name, sir?
F. Stephen Tillman.
Thank you.
And I believe that they're a great operation, but I'm just concerned about the smell. If you've ever been by a slaughterhouse, there's always a smell. And how are they going to take care of the waste? I mean, is it going to be in a dumpster out back, or how do they take care of the waste of the leftover animals?
We will give you an answer.
Okay. And I guess the last question is, they said they're going to be bringing animals in, and slight disruption, but they're going to keep them in a building. What building are they going to keep them in, and how are they going to control the smell?
Okay. Sure.
That's the only questions I have.
Thank you.
Stephen, do you live in that residence? Did he mute himself?
I live right next door.
Okay.
Like I said, I love food and I love their process, and they're good people, but I just want to know those answers to those questions.
Sure, thanks.
We have a representative that's going to speak and give you the answers to those
We
questions.
have to finish the public portion first. We have to find out if there's anybody else who wants to speak against.
I'm sorry, I know. We have to close the public hearing.
We have to
Yeah, okay.
find out if anybody else on Zoom wants to
Right.
speak.
Anyone else wishing to speak against on Zoom?
Somebody put something in the chat there.
Mr. Nathan, go ahead and unmute yourself and please present your question and provide your name and address for the record, please.
All right, good afternoon, Nathan Winya. And I work directly across the street at 1712 Lincoln Way West.
Your question
I
or
have
your
some-
concern, please?
I do have some concerns about health and smell just from previous experience. I guess my general question, I have three of them, is how can there be a guarantee of no health issues? How would the wastewater generated be handled? And how would any future planned expansions affect those same two issues?
We're going to give you the answers in a moment, please. Anything else you'd like to mention?
That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for participating. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to speak against this or have a question?
No.
Seeing none, this discussion now is closed to the public, and you may come over and please answer these concerns. Thank you.
All right.
Give us your name and address again,
All
please.
right. My name's Chad Thornburg, 7831 West YZ Avenue, Schoolcraft, Michigan. I believe there was 5 questions right there. 2 from the first guy and 3 from the second gentleman. I believe the first question he asked was, how are we going to control the smell? The smell will go into like a self-contained, like, so we can put it in the freezer and we can hold the smell so it doesn't rot, it doesn't do anything. Then we can take it out and we can put it in. Have you ever heard of the self-contained, like, they're almost like a hazardous bin that you put them in. So no air can escape, nothing can escape from it, and it will be picked up daily. So there will not be enough time to generate enough smell. His second question was the live animals coming in the door. With the live animals coming in the door, obviously animals use the restroom no different than people do. It will be constantly cleaned up and washed. You have to keep it at that standard with USDA.
Will they be in a pen, or how will they be contained?
The idea of it is that you will walk them off of the trailer. They will be sort of in an aisleway, and the process will start right then as they're going through. And it's not something that we're like looking at doing every day at the moment right now. We might only slaughter 1 day a week to start with. It's not something that we're looking at that I don't think that it's gonna have enough size in the property to be like a 5-day-a-week processing plant. Now the other question he had.
Odor, let's go back to odor again. I know you talked about it, but please bring it up again.
All right, so the odor, so if you take anything, like if you take the stomach of anything or anything like that, and you were to hold it in a storage freezer until it's time for the disposal company to come to pick it up, there will be no smell created from the offal, which is what most people are concerned about.
Waste.
Yeah, the waste of the animal. Now, we want to minimize the amount of waste we have so we can produce pet food, we can produce other things along the way, because obviously that's a cost for us to get rid of, so we would rather produce things that, everybody's animals enjoy eating and everything as well. Far as the smell of manure or anything like that, being in the building and being constantly kept clean by washing up with hot water, everything, the smell won't be there. I don't know if there's something more to elaborate on.
I thought Stephen had a question on the wastewater.
The questions were, how can a guarantee be given? How will the wastewater be handled? And then the future expansion.
Well, when I talked to the health department, they told me that I was going to have to upgrade the entire septic system to be able to handle everything. So I haven't got into everything with the health department, but I know what's currently there isn't big enough, so I do have to put in a better septic system to handle any of the wastewater, anything like that that comes along the way. They haven't gave me the specifics on everything that I have to have right now, but I just know that it has to be updated. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What's the next question?
A guarantee be given on, my understanding is the representations made today, and then clarification on the future expansion. On health concerns.
I guess if he could explain what the health concern would be. I'm not sure what he is talking about when it talks to health concern. Because far as the process goes, throughout how you humanely euthanize an animal all the way through all the storage of that animal, all the way to cutting up and selling as retail is completely controlled by the USDA. So you have to meet every single one of their health standards to be able to even sell it. So if there won't be any health concern at all on the product.
Do you happen to know how often do they come in and maybe check to see?
They will be on site when you are, when you kill, when you pack, when you label, they are there.
They're
They're
there
on-
personally?
They are there personally.
They being USDA.
What?
They
Yes,
being US
USDA will be there.
Good.
Yep. So you constantly have the United States Department of Agricultural controlling every health standard, every single aspect of that entire process. I technically would be listening to everything that they have to say, and I have to follow that rule. They even control what height your grass can be cut at. I mean, it's pretty stringent.
So you said you're not looking to do this like 5 days a week right now,
No.
but, sporadic. So do you have to give USDA advance notice of?
You will have it's almost like you'll have an agreement with them because you can't change. So I only can operate in the hours that they have. So if they said, I'm just going to give an example. If they say we can start at 7 in the morning and I have to be done by 5. And if something went wrong for the day and it's 5:05, I'm out of luck.
But do they predetermine what day you do this activity, or?
I get to predetermine what day that happens on.
And you have to let them know so
Yep.
they're there and all that?
Yep.
Just one more clarification. These animals are, say, on a truck or a trailer,
Mhm.
and they're brought to the site, and you said they're kind of brought into an aisle. I understand that.
Mhm.
Now, how many would you have? Let's say that you're doing beef.
Yep.
Would you have 10 of them? Would you have 3 of them? How many would you have in a day like that?
I mean, that's where I said I didn't want to limit my number, but if I'm gonna haul a trailer from our farm there, I'm probably gonna put 10 of them on the trailer and bring them in for
10,
that day.
did you say?
Yeah, at least 10, maybe 12 on
Okay.
a trailer. But the building is adequately sized to be able to handle all that. And the process, I don't know who has been in a slaughter facility before, but the process is very quick.
Yeah, so basically the animal doesn't stay there overnight?
No, we do not want that animal to be there overnight. If we had a problem for the day and something broke, we would load the animals back on the trailer and take them back to the farm.
Okay, thank you.
Did I answer all the questions?
Well, I think the gentleman who submitted the question on Zoom, I don't know if the first one was really answered the guarantee of the public health issues. So it's not just about the animals, but those living around there. What's the public health concerns?
He would have to tell me what he is concerned about, because right now I do not see a public health concern.
Is Mr. Nathan allowed to unmute and clarify?
The board's allowed to ask anybody questions that they want to, so if one of you directly addresses the commenter and asks him to clarify, you could do that. He can't just volunteer it.
Sure. Mr. Nathan, would you like to unmute yourself and to kind of clarify that particular question of yours?
I've read some studies about public health concerns, as well as I thought one of the slides at the beginning said that there wouldn't be any health concerns with the facility. So that's kind of the basis of that.
Okay, so we will have to test the same as everybody else does our water. We have to pass everything that every other business has to do. We have to pass all those health department risk. And on top of that, we have to go a next step farther by being USDA. So everything, like down to drinking water for the employees, all the way to the correct water for the animals when you're washing down, everything is tested and done.
Does that answer your question, sir?
if I may, just to clarify, I think, I know the answer, but I think
Okay.
this is one of those operations that everybody wants to have hamburgers for the 4th of July, but they don't really want to think about this part of it.
Yep, exactly.
If, for instance, you're processing animals on a Monday, on Mondays, USDA's there, some accident happens and blood goes into a floor drain, what happens then?
You will have to make it so your floor drain goes exactly where it needs to go, so there is no possible way of any kind of contamination.
And possibly pumping out,
Yep, it will be 100% controlled.
calling in serve or whatever. So I think that's what people get concerned about, is
Yep.
somehow it's gonna be in the groundwater and in the well
Yep.
water and
No.
what have you.
Everything will have its own designated spot, so the blood will go into its own designated, like, tank that's refrigerated, so you don't have smell.
Until it's picked up.
Yep, correct.
And I'm thinking in terms of the gentleman that lives next door, I mean, literally on the other side of the fence.
Yep,
What time of day would you, because animals aren't always compliant,
correct.
sometimes they make a ruckus. What time of day would you be bringing live animals in?
I mean, obviously, that is something that we could talk with the neighbors on and do stuff, because, I mean, especially starting out and doing stuff, like, we'll be a whole lot more flexible when we first start. Now, part of the questions would be, like, the traffic out on the street, and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, if I bring them in at 6:30 in the morning, then that's a good time to start, your day. But at the same time, like, I wouldn't like to say that, hey, I'll have everything in by a certain time, because, like, it snows a foot of ground, get a foot of snow and you don't show up on time. But I mean, that's a conversation I think I could have with him, and, like, work something out with them, saying, hey, this is what we're thinking. Is that kind of okay with you? And see if we can work something out with them.
Okay.
This just entered my mind, and I appreciate your input. This facility is now in operation, I guess, and selling product. How do they get the product now?
From other distributors currently.
They're brought to the site, but no live animals at the present time?
No live animals
Okay,
currently.
thank you.
But I mean, that's also one of my concerns, is like, you lose your distributor, or you lose somebody that's close to you. How do you get product? So the best way to do it is to control what's coming in the door. And plus, I think people really, especially nowadays, people really like to know where their meat comes from. And we know exactly where our meat comes from. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity for Osceola.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board or the staff? Okay, at this point, we'll call for the motion. This is to send it to the Osceola Town Council with either a favorable, unfavorable, or no motion?
Technically, you have to start with either favorable or unfavorable.
Right, okay.
We just want to make you aware, because you don't hear special exception uses all the time, and this is the town of Osceola's ordinance. What I was just looking at, if there are certain, you know how you can apply conditions or commitments with variances? You can recommend to the town council commitments, and the language says regarding site development or even operational. So if you wanted a commitment to limit to 1 day a week or during normal business hours, that's a recommendation that you can make to the town council. It ultimately is their call, but if there were some concerns that you all had, that's an option. Not recommending that, I just want to make you aware, because
Good point.
you don't see these every month.
Thank you.
So with regard to conditions, I kind of feel like, well, in a way, what we're doing is we're kicking this back then to the town to make the final decision, right?
You provide a recommendation to the town council, who ultimately votes to approve, deny, or approve with conditions.
I guess I just scratched my head on one thing. They got a place in Michigan where they're raising them. Why don't they build a facility there?
You know, I thought the same thing.
And then transport the carcasses after the fact. Instead of trying to bring it into a town, not really a city limits, but a town's limits.
If you want to ask the petitioner that, you can ask the petitioner that.
Ask him to come back up.
So do you mind asking him?
Yeah. So are the rules in Michigan that much more difficult under USDA than in Indiana? To move the cattle from Michigan to Indiana just for slaughter versus slaughtering at the premise where the farm is, where you gotta build a building anyhow. But you do have coolers there. So I'm asking why you wanna move them live instead of slaughtering them there and then just moving the product down.
I mean, if you already have the refrigeration system, all the money is already there. To go and build one in Michigan is gonna cost me way more money than to put it on an existing building that's already, I would say, 75% set up to already cut up everything. The only thing that they're not currently doing there right now is the slaughter part. But they have everything when a half a beef comes in to cut everything up. So the cost of it alone is what's driving me to go find a business that has cash flow currently and to be able to have enough money to start something like this.
But how much modification to the existing building needs to be done to get it suitable versus just building it all new on your premise in Michigan that already, you know, that can meet those standards without doing any in-depth modifications?
I mean, the only thing that I put on there was a 40 by 60 building was the only thing I had to add to this one. So, to do the other part, you're going to add another, the retail stores, maybe 30 foot of that building. So you're gonna add a lot more of a building to make it happen.
Well, I'm talking about like the controlling of like, so Mr. Roush presented that question of like, an accident happens, blood flows into a drain, what do you do then in that instance? And you said it has to be all controlled, so there's no way it can leach back into the, you know, public system.
Correct.
That's what I meant by modifications. Are there in-depth modifications that need to be done for that to be suitable?
No.
So what you're doing here would still be technically all new build. The drain lines and all that stuff.
If you're trying to separate the slaughter facility from the store, then yes, the new slaughter facility stuff would be new.
That's what I'm asking.
Yep. But you are not going to cash flow a business and just start a slaughter facility. So I would have to choose between one or the other. I wouldn't be able to buy DC meats and start a slaughter facility all at the same time. So
Do these
I'd be
add-
choosing where.
Do these animals come from always one location originally?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't want to limit myself to that statement.
No, I'm just asking, did you say you're from Schoolcraft?
Mm-hmm.
Is that where this farm is?
Yep.
Does it have the same facility there
No.
to slaughter?
We
No.
are just a small family farm.
Okay, thanks. That helps.
All right, thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Sid Schaefer, I make a motion, we send a favorable report to the Osceola Town Council for their approval if they choose.
Lance Roush, second.
We have a motion to send this to the Osceola Town Council with a favorable recommendation.
Mr. Ritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Roush,
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Velman,
Yes.
Mr. Hawley.
Yes. Based on the testimony presented here today, the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, after careful consideration, finds this variance is granted and will issue written findings of the facts. Thank you.
In this case, it would be a favorable recommendation on the special
Oh,
use,
God,
but
thank you.
yes.
That's why you're here. Favorable, yeah. Okay. Item 2 on Beach Road.
Location 69416 Beach Road. Owner Rachel M. Pittman. Requested actions. Variance number 1 from section 154.092 sub A to allow for a lot area of 2.5 acres where 20 acres would be required for proposed one lot and one outlot subdivision. Variance 2 from section 154.092 sub B to allow for a lot width of 170 feet where 200 feet would be required for a lot less than 20 acres in area for a proposed one lot and one outlot subdivision. Variance 3 from section 154.092 sub C to allow for a lot frontage of 170 feet where 200 feet would be required for a lot less than 20 acres in area for proposed one lot and one outlot subdivision. Variance 4 from section 154.092 sub D to allow for a side yard west setback of 23 feet where 30 feet would be required for existing accessory structures in a proposed one lot and one outlot subdivision. And variance number 5 from section 154.092 sub D to allow for a rear yard east setback of 15 feet where 30 feet would be required for an existing accessory structure in a proposed one lot and one outlot subdivision, zoning A agricultural district, county.
Thank you. Staff, please.
Good afternoon. This is Carl Brown Grimm, Area Plan Commission staff. Shelley, could you click on the PowerPoint, please? So all those variances you just heard, they're essentially allowing the petitioner to split off the existing farmhouse along with 2.5 acres approximately from this 20-acre lot here, and also to legalize the existing accessory structures on the property. So this property is located in the southeast corner of the county, and it's abutting other fields to the south that are owned by the same family, who presumably wish to continue to farm the field while the house is sold separately. So staff is recommending approval today, given that the proposed split removes as little viable ag land as possible from the existing farm field, and the remainder of the balance of the land does not present the opportunity to develop another single-family residence without coming back to you for additional variances. So here we have the existing farmhouse and those accessory structures that will all be sold off as one. There's the front part of the farm looking south along Beach, and then also looking north there along Beach. This is across the field, showing other farm fields in the area. Here's the proposed site plan showing the shape of the new lot. It's configured to fit all of the accessory buildings, as I mentioned, as well as the septic and reserve areas all onto the same property. Looking at our state law criteria, staff doesn't feel that this petition will be injurious to the public, as no new buildings are being proposed, and the approval of the lot as configured will allow for the field to continue to remain in productive farmland. Property values will not be adversely affected as the preservation of productive agricultural land will similarly preserve the agricultural character of the surrounding area. And then the practical difficulty in this case, it comes from the fact that The strict application of the ordinance would require the petitioner to either not sell or sell the entire lot of land, removing the family's ability to continue to till a productive piece of agricultural property, as it appears they wish to continue to have the ability to do. And I will take any questions you may have.
Seeing none, could we have the petition? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Carl, so, you know, we run across these all the time, but I'm just curious, you know, the 2.5 acres and then the rest of it's an outlot, I get all that. Did they just not want to mow grass, or was it just the issue of the farmer just, they want to keep the rest as I guess they could have added 7 feet and had half of these variances not needed. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just curious what.
I think the idea was that the petitioner wanted to keep as much farm, because of how the farm field like wraps around the front of the house. They wanted to keep as much of that as possible on one lot and then leave the house and the buildings on the other lot.
Okay, so when we do these, it runs with the land, right, Brandy? So if somebody wanted to build a building in the future, it's going to be, even though it's zoned ag, it's going to be a 15-foot setback or whatever we approved today, right?
If all you do is a motion to approve the variance with nothing else stated, that is correct.
Yeah.
If you were to add the written commitment that be in accordance with the site plan as represented in the variance petition, then it would be tied specifically to that site plan, which is why staff usually recommends that as a condition in their report.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mike Danch from Danch Harner Associates, 1643 Commerce Drive here in South Bend, representing the petitioner. And as Carl had mentioned, what we tried to do in this particular case, because of the intent of the agricultural ordinance, is we tried to keep it as close as possible to maximize the ground, the farm ground. And it wasn't too bad in doing this one, but the only issue that really came up here was the septic system. And what we ended up doing is right now for that particular house, they're in the process of redoing the septic system. This is one of those typical farm properties where they had a dry well and that's it. But because of the soils here, we've got basically a seasonal high water table. It's great for farming, but it's not great for septic systems. The soil scientist went out and took a look at it. Tim Monahan was the soil scientist in this particular case. What they had to come up with was a mound system that would be approved by the health department, but anytime, I know you're probably aware, when we go through the subdivision process, we not only have to have that first system, we also have to have a septic for the second system in case the first system were to fail. And that's what we kind of did, was square off that area, and that's why you see the configuration that we came up with. I'm assuming that they're not going to add, since somebody's actually buying the house and those outbuildings, they're not going to be adding additional silos or barns or anything like that. One of the other things that we had also done was there's a well on kind of northeast of the house. We placed that north line far enough away so that there wasn't required to get an easement if they did sell that farm property to a farmer to have a 50-foot radius around that well. So what we tried to do is be practical as we could with how we laid out that particular line. What the end result would be if the board did grant all the variances that we're requesting, we'll take the rest of that farm ground and make that an outlot so that it will not be buildable, as the staff had mentioned. Because the remaining farm ground is about, it's not only the rest of this piece, but it's the one to the south that goes down to the ditch. I think it's about 38 acres total that will be an outlot and will continue to be farmed. If you got any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them.
Do we have any questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Holly, for Mr. Danch. I'm kind of concurring, not kind of concurring, I'm definitely concurring with Mr. Roush on if we had 7 feet here and 15 feet here, we're down to 2 variances at this point. And I'm all for keeping farmland, but is the petitioner opposed that, would you be opposed to adding that 7 feet?
No,
which yield are you going to get out of the 7 feet by 400 feet you're going to get?
No, if you would like me to add that additional footage, I'd be glad to do it. You tell me where you would like it. If you want us to add like the additional footage on that, the east side where the pole barn is, and if you want me to change that line where the silo portion is, we'd be glad to do that for you. That's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
I was just trying to make sure that we were trying to stay with the intent of the ordinance. That was basically it.
Appreciate that, yeah, and I certainly understand that. I just, some of those things just don't, just don't always make sense. Why not
Yeah.
just do a bit more? But yeah, I understand, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'd be glad to change those lines slightly. Because we've submitted the subdivision, but we can fix that. That's not a big deal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Discussion is now open to the public. Is there anyone here present that wishes to speak in favor of this? Please come forward, state your name and your address.
Hello, I'm Landon Yoder. Address is 66491 Beach Road. I am the contingent purchaser of this property. I've never been to one of these before, so it's kind of new to me, but I guess I was told it would be in favor for me to come be here today.
Sure, thank you.
One question we did have originally, our purchase agreement was for 5 acres. And we were told that they were not able to do the 5 acres. We never really got a clear answer why. Another thing we talked about with the owner is like how the property has the L shape. Like she acted like she was in favor to square that off for the whole property. I don't know why that couldn't be done, but I guess that's the only questions I would have on that.
We'll get you an answer to that.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak in favor? Please come forward. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak in favor of this? Please. Seeing none, is there anyone here present that wishes to speak against this? Please come forward. Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak against this? Seeing none, this is now closed to the public. Mike, would you like to come forward and help with that question?
We had discussions with the owner when they started through this process, and the idea of having the 5 acres, I explained to him what the intent of the agricultural ordinance was from a zoning standpoint. And I said, with the experience that I've had over the last 35 years, we have to be very careful how we create those parcels of ground to sell off an existing homestead. The board looks strictly at what's going to be taken out of agricultural production. There's a fine line where the board looks at it to decide whether the request is asking too much for what's being done to create that parcel of ground. So that's where that came from. If this board is fine with squaring off that parcel, that's fine with me as well. Again, what I try to do is with what I know the agricultural ordinance states, how we've been doing stuff for the last several years, and that's why you're seeing what you see here. We tried to reduce that amount of agricultural land taken out of production.
By squaring that off, what are we talking about acreage? Does that increase it much?
It could take it up over probably 3 acres, to maybe 3 1/4.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the board or the staff?
So I guess the question is, I'm also, I guess I'm squaring up the lot would also probably not require the 200 foot of lot width and frontage. So we're down to one just required minimum acreage, but without being able to put a finite number on the acreage that would be lining that all up. Is that something that we would have to table this and redo things if that was the case?
Well, you could probably allow the staff to take what you're saying here and just require us to create that as part of the subdivision process. And let us do that as part of the subdivision process, that you're granting us to go ahead and square off the piece of property when we'll calculate what that acreage is, and we'll go from there. So what you could still do is grant us the variance down to a minimum of 2.75 acres, but we'll actually end up with more on the subdivision.
Got it.
And then, of course, we don't need the 170 foot, because we will have more than 200 foot of frontage, so we won't need that variance.
And that's what I was going to say too, if Mr. Danch could give us a definite minimum that he knows of, and it sounds like the 2.75 would be the minimum amount that would be
Yeah.
for the acreage if you squared it off. Once we had a minimum number, you'd be able to approve that. And since it would be less of a deviation than the 2.5 that they're asking for, it wouldn't have to be re-advertised.
If we said 3, would that be acceptable, Mr. Danch?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'd be fine. Like I said, I can create that. That's not a problem.
And that's less than advertised, so that's still acceptable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike. Thank
Okay.
you. Any other questions, concerns?
Joe, I'm kind of along the same lines with my thinking, but I want to ask staff. I mean, you know, we're hearing from a seasoned professional that's been doing this for a long time, and he was doing what he was guessing you and or we would want to see. To me, it makes a lot more sense to have more, I don't know, logically shaped parcels. I don't know if for other reason, it just seems like it makes more sense in the world with regard to, you know, when things sell and get outlotted or unoutlotted, or somebody else is coming to ask to build on something and they want to put a driveway that snakes around that guy's front yard. I mean, what's the staff's position on this?
Do you want me to? So the concern that we had is with the remainder of the land left over, and if it's small enough that there can be an argument that there's the field loses agricultural value, then that opens the door to a reasonable variance for another single-family use on that field in the future. So it's kind of like we were already on the fence with this one. It's kind of a fine line between what's left over versus what's
But if it's an outlot, they would have to come before the board to ask anyway.
Right. But if the field is small enough such that it loses its agricultural value, there's more of an argument in the future for that single-family development, increasing the density of the agricultural district.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah.
But it also shows right here where it's unpractical to demand 20 acres to build on.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we're taking one apart.
And the same owner owns down to the ditch, Mike?
Yes. So in this case, we looked at that as well.
Right.
Yeah, so keep in mind that remaining parcel is going to end up being like a little bit less now. I told you 38 acres, and it'll probably end up being a little less than that, but it will be an outlot. So if they ever decided that they wanted to build on that, they would have to come back before this board and request that you change it from an outlot and make it buildable. And of course, you could stop it at that point and say, no, sorry.
So you are going to join it with the parcel
Yes,
down to the
yeah,
ditch
that's
as an
gonna
outlet?
be- Yep, that's why we're gonna do the large one. The subdivision that we submitted shows going all the way down to the ditch as the outlot. So we're encumbering all the rest of their property as an outlot.
Then we would recommend that as a condition of approval,
Yeah,
that it be
Yeah.
joined as an outlot,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
adjacent parcel as an outlot in the subdivision process. We'd ask you to include that with your motion.
and that'll keep it from being built on.
Okey dokey. And do we have a motion?
Well, now that Abby complicated it, we'll see. So while I understand the intent of the ordinance and Mr. Danch's great attempt to keep as much tillable land into a tillable lot, I think it makes more sense to even off the lot itself and create a nice rectangular lot, and also move the lines to meet the minimum requirements as other ordinances read. So I would make a motion to approve variance number 5 and deny variances 1, 2, 3, and 4, or whatever, how we want to state that, and approve variance number 5 on the condition that the remaining parcel, I'm sorry, and to the number 5 variance being to a minimum of 3 acres. With the
I think you've got them mixed up.
Variance number 1 is the lot
5
area.
is about the rear setback.
Oh, I'm looking on the site plan and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So
We got to do it
Sorry.
by what's on the agenda. So variance 1 is the acreage request.
well, let me pull out my agenda then. All right.
Start
So
over, Joe.
scratch everything.
And I would
just said.
suggest,
I
since
would
they're
make a
going to do
motion-
different things, do one motion at a time for each of the variances. Or if whatever you're going to do, if you want to approve one of them, or approve more than one of them, do all of the approvals in one go and the denials together.
Okay. I would make a motion to approve variance number 1 at 3 acres minimum.
As amended.
As amended, with the condition that the remaining outlot be combined with adjacent parcel. Is that correct?
That the remainder be combined with the adjacent parcel and designated as an outlot.
Designated as an outlot. Everybody see that?
Is that it?
This
Is that the motion, is that the motion complete
That's the
now?
motion. Approve variance number 1, yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. Donnie?
Donnie seconds.
Mr. Roush,
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Ritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Velman,
Yes.
Mr. Hawley.
Yes.
Okay, how about the others?
I would make a motion to deny variances 2 through 5.
Does the petitioner still need the number 5 variance? I know the
Which was 5?
15 feet versus 15.
The rear yard, the.
Well, no, we're going to move that line, so.
Okay.
Is what was requested, I think we have to have is a 20-foot rear yard setback? So we'll move that line to the east, the 5 feet to make that, we'll meet the rear yard setback for the pole barn.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
don't need that one, and number
Yeah.
4 was about a side yard west setback?
Yeah, so really, the only variances we would need would be for the acreage, and that's it.
Okay.
That's all we need, because I'll just go ahead and adjust the lines that you're seeing here to make the lot fit with that, and we're good to go. So it's just the acreage requirement that you're approving.
Okay then, Joe, it sounds like your denials would work.
Donnie Ritzma, I'll second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Roush,
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Velman,
Yes.
Mr. Ritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Hawley.
Yes. Based on the testimony presented here today, the Board of Zoning Appeals have, after careful consideration, finds these variants
Variance number
Granted.
1 was approved with conditions
With-
as amended,
Thank you,
and 2 through 5 were denied.
yes. And we will issue written facts, findings to the facts. Thank you. Okay.
Holly,
You-
before
you-
we go to petition number 3, I do not want to get halfway through a petition and then have to leave, so I'm going to remove myself before the petition is read, and I will attempt to get back on as quickly as possible.
Okay, Joe,
you.
thanks. Thank you very much.
Bye, Joe.
Okay, you want to make a note of that, Shelley?
I sure did.
Thank you. Now we're item number 3, Eureka.
14210 Eureka Avenue. Owner Patrick N. Huff Jr. Requested action, variance number 1 from section 154.107, sub C1, to allow a front east setback of 5 foot where a minimum of 35 feet is required to permit construction of a deck on a dwelling with a non-legal conforming front setback. Zoning R Single Family District, County.
Thank you.
This is Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff. So the petitioner would like to construct a deck on the east side of his home. The house was built in 1925, therefore it's legal non-conforming with respect to that east property line. It's set back about 13 feet from that property line, so once the deck is constructed, he'll be within 5 feet of the property line. Here's the house here. As you can see, there's like an existing kind of stoop that comes off of the house, and this deck is proposed to connect to that. So it'll be at the same height and then have a railing going up similar to what is there now. There we go. Staff recommends approval of the variance. There is practical difficulty given that the house is legal non-conforming with respect to that front property line. The zoning ordinance would allow a deck of under 30 inches to encroach into the front yard by up to 10 feet. However, the petitioner would not be able to install a deck that's level with the existing stoop with a railing and still stay under the 30 inches. Since it makes for a more functional and aesthetically pleasing deck to allow that greater height, staff recommends approval. Turning to the state law criteria, it'll not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. This deck is still going to be outside of the clear sight triangle, and it's actually still going to be approximately 25 feet from the pavement because the right-of-way there is actually 60 feet wide. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The deck will improve the value and appearance of the home, which could potentially actually benefit the neighborhood. And we find that the strict application of the terms of this chapter would result in practical difficulties because, again, the house is constructed at a legal non-conforming setback, and if the deck were constructed below that 30 inches, which would be permitted in the front yard, it either couldn't be at the same height as the existing deck or it could not have the railing. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions that we have? Okay. May we have the petitioner come forward, please, your name and address.
Oh, yeah, Patrick Ruff, 14210 Eureka Avenue. Yeah, it's just a very small deck, 8 by 12. It won't encroach past the front line of the house, and it'll only come away from the east side 8 feet and down the side of the house 12 feet.
Are you going to construct this yourself, or do you have a contractor?
I'm going to be constructing it myself.
How did this come up when you went to pull a permit? Or?
I went to pull the permit. They told me because of the way I was going to construct it, I didn't need a permit because I was only attaching it to the existing deck. But because of where I was putting it, I had to get approval from zoning board.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, this is now closed, excuse me. We will now open it up to the public. Anyone wishing to speak in favor here presently, please come forward. Anyone on Zoom who is in favor of this, please speak. No one? Is there anyone in the room that would want to speak against this? Please come forward. Seeing none, anyone on Zoom that is against this?
No.
Thank you. This discussion is now closed to the public. Do we have any questions from the staff or the board or the attorney? Okay, we have, remember now, we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Only 4 present, so we need a motion.
And it would need to be unanimous?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Right. Mr. Chairman, given the technical nature of this variance and the excellent presentation that staff made, I think that we should, I would like to make a motion to approve the variance for 14210 Eureka Avenue as written.
Donnie Ritzma, second.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Roush?
Yes.
Mr. Ritzma?
Yes.
Mr. Hawley?
Yes.
Motion
Based-
passes.
Based on the testimony presented here today, the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, after careful consideration, finds this variance is granted and will issue written findings of the facts. Thank you very much. Pancha. Thank you, sir.
Location 17615 Pancha Street and 54383 29th Street. Owner Nicole L. Amore. Requested action, variance from section 154.070, sub C1D1A, to allow for a 6-foot privacy fence in the front yard south. Zoning R Single Family District, County, and the petitioner is on Zoom.
Good afternoon. This is Carl Brown-Grimm, Area Plan Commission staff again. So the petitioner in this case is looking to allow for a 6-foot privacy fence in the front yard portion of their property. The property is located along the corner of 26th Street and Poncha Street. It's just south of State Road 23. The house is located on a double lot, and they're looking to put a fence along the western portion of the property and then basically up to the house line there. This is the house as it currently stands, looking from 26th Street, so that what would be, the homeowner would likely consider the front of the house.
It's 29th Street.
Oh, 29th Street, I apologize. This is the front along Poncha Street, which is to be partially fenced off. I think, again, it's going to go up to the rear of the house, so the front portion, as seen here, won't be fenced off. Fences like the one that they're being proposed today are typical in this neighborhood. The following slides are a few examples of 6-foot privacy fences abutting streets in similar fashions. This is the site plan showing roughly where the fence will be, as I kind of described there. And this is an amended site plan that shows more measurements for your review. It should have been included at the front of your packet today.
Yeah, we should have that.
Looking at our state law criteria, staff feels that approval of this variance will not be injurious. The fence will be well out of the clear site area and not cause impediments for other drivers along Poncha Street or 29th Street. As you've seen, fences like this are typical in the neighborhood and therefore should not adversely affect surrounding property values. And then staff feels that practical difficulties do exist in this case, as the strict application of the ordinance would prevent the petitioner from reasonably providing privacy to the yard, given the status as a double lot. It's kind of a strange thing. And I will take any questions you might have.
Any questions? May we have the presentation from the owner, please? Come forward with your name and address.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Nicole Armour, 54383 29th Street. I'm just proposing that I put a privacy fence up in the back of the property. It is a 2-lot property, but the house is on both lots. There was an existing chain link fence there first. We tore that down because it was only about 3 foot tall.
Run that along the same. Run it along the same.
We basically want to run it along the same way as the chain link was, except taking a bunch away from it, not adding anything or going any further out.
Can you describe what the fence will look like? What type is it? Is it decorative? Is it like what we've seen in the pictures?
Yes, it would be exactly like you see in the pictures, just a standard 6 foot privacy fence.
So you can't see in, you can't see out, basically, right?
Correct. And it will have an access gate on each side of the front of our house, and then an access gate for the garage on the south side.
Thank you. Anything else, or do we have any questions at this time? Okay, we'll open this up to the public. Is there anyone in the presence who would like to speak in favor of this? Please come forward. Anyone on Zoom that would like to speak in favor?
No.
Anyone present that would like to speak against this, please come forward. State your name and address, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Hirschler. I live at 17425 Wilshire Drive, which is approximately about 2/10 of a mile away from the petitioner's address. I have lived at that residence for 45 years on Wilshire Drive. I'm not thoroughly against a fence that they're putting up, more so a privacy fence. I have a neighbor close to me that has boxed in their house somewhat over the years, and I don't think that ever came before this board. To me, the covering that much territory right out to nearly out to the street with a privacy fence is somewhat unsightly for our neighborhood in Maple Lane. There are a few other homes, yes, that have a privacy fence, and if, I don't know, you can click back on those pictures. That fence right there, I'll bet you, is probably 15 or 20 years old and has not been maintained. It just basically weathers, and after a certain period of time becomes unsightly and just somewhat looks like it's falling apart. Now a chain link fence, which my yard is fenced in by a black chain link fence, not 6 foot, but it's a 4-foot chain link fence at my residence. Blends in with all the surrounding landscaping, and everything is pretty well hidden because of its color. Would not be opposed to anything like that. But I just, I don't think, I don't know the reason of wanting to box your yard in to be non-viewable for sight lines of neighbors. When they look out, they're looking at like you've taken a cardboard box and boxed your house in, your whole lot in. I don't think it's aesthetically pleasing for the Maple Lane area. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak against this? Please come forward. Anybody on Zoom that wishes to speak against it, please state.
No.
This discussion is now closed to the public. Nicole, would you like to respond to that gentleman's question regarding why do you want to do this? What's the purpose?
Yes, I would. I actually do want it for some privacy. I also think it would keep our neighbors' children from crossing into our yard. We do have a well pit in the back, and I believe it would also help with the safety reasons. It will also be maintained. We're going to stain it and seal coat it and keep up on the maintenance for it. It's not going to be that close to the road. I believe it was 20 feet back is how far it would be from the Poncha Street side. And I did personally speak with our neighbors, not that they're present, but they also wanted to put up a privacy fence in addition to ours, so I'm sure they will be petitioning soon as well.
Thank you. Any questions from the board or staff? Any further questions? At this time, we'll call for the motion.
Donnie Ritzma, I'll make a motion that we approve the variance as requested and as I concur with the analysis provided in the staff report.
We have a second?
Lance Roush, second.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Ritzma?
Yes.
Mr. Roush?
Yes.
Mr. Hawley?
Before I give my answer, I'd like to ask that gentleman there and thank him for taking the time to come to this meeting and express his opinion. I feel strongly, too, about fences. I just feel that when you see something like this, it's almost like you're building a fortress inside. I'm not a big advocate of that, but there are other fences in the neighborhood. I would hope that they would take care of the property and take care of the fence and do what they say they're going to do, but that doesn't mean that the next homeowner would do it. With that being said, I'm still going to vote in favor of it, yes.
4-0, motion passes.
Based on the testimony presented here today, the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, after careful consideration, finds this variance is granted and will issue written findings of the facts. Thank you. We're to Osborne.
Location 20940 Osborne Road. Daniel J. Sosa and Danielle M. Szyskowski. Thank you. Requested action, variance number 1 from section 154.092 sub D to allow for a single yard east building setback of 12 feet to legalize an existing structure. And variance number 2 from section 154.092 sub D to allow for a side yard east building setback of 5 foot to legalize an existing structure. Zoning A Agricultural District, County.
Good afternoon. So what happened in this case is the petitioners were looking to build a porch at the rear of their house located here. In the process of pulling the necessary permits, staff was unable to find any documentation of variances being granted to the original structure that was built in 2007. Petitioners are here now today to legalize the house. As you can see from this aerial, this property is located in a neighborhood that is completely zoned A, agricultural. The side setbacks in this district, as you probably know by now, are 30 feet. According to the original permit issued, the house was built at side setbacks that were 10 feet and 13 feet respectively. Here you can see a closer look. As you can see from just this pretty close-up aerial, this neighborhood consists of many lots that are much smaller than the typical ag lot, and plenty of non-conforming cases there. This is one side yard of the house in question. The house is to the left in this picture. And that's the other side yard. Here are like a typical example of the surrounding neighborhood. What you can see, this strip of road obviously much closer resembles a residential neighborhood than your typical rural residential seen in most ag districts. This is a site plan showing updated measurements along with the existing accessory structure and the proposed porch at the rear of the house. The presence of the accessory structure is the reason for the closer, I think, 5-foot variance request. Turning to state law criteria, approval of this variance will not be injurious. This is evidenced by the fact that the house was built in 2007 without complaint and has existed since then without complaint. Legalizing the current setbacks will also not have a detrimental effect on surrounding property values. As you have seen, the surrounding lots are nowhere near the A district's typical standard 20 acres, and many other properties have much closer setbacks than 30 feet that would typically be required by the district. And then finally, practical difficulties exist in that treating this property as a typical ag property with respect to setbacks would clearly allow for very little actual building area on the lot, given that the lot width is only approximately 70 feet. So if you take 30 from both sides, that would only leave 10 feet of buildable area. So staff does recommend approval of the variances, and I will be happy to take any questions.
I just can't help it. It's because of how I'm wired. I get what's happening. What I don't get is in how 2007, I mean, do you guys immediately call the building department and say, guys, what's going on here? Or is it just irrelevant at this
We
point?
would, but it's not like anybody from 2007.
I was 11 in 2007.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
You know, the only thing, could we go back to the zoning map?
Yeah.
Is Lance and everyone, so you look at this area, and I asked the guys to include the zoning map in the packet, so it's evident that it is ag, because if you're just looking at the parcels,
You'd assume our,
you would.
yeah.
Yes.
That's my stomping grounds, and I mean, I get it, it's all, some of those lots are this wide. But in a way, it just, in my mind, it conjures the notion of, well, get the permit for whatever, do whatever you want, if 10 years goes by, it'll be okay.
I really, knowing our building department, don't think that that's the case. I think they looked at the aerial and assumed it was R.
It was R, yeah.
And really, if you look at it, it is more characteristic with the R district.
There's no question. What are the dimensions as it sits?
I believe the house is
12?
Yeah, 12 on the, what is that, west? Yeah, and then the accessory building is 5 feet from the east property line, so that's the reason for the 5-foot
And
variance.
5 is R, isn't it?
It's 8.
Since I still don't have my cheat sheet?
It's 8.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Okay. Right.
Thank you, Lance. I think.
Yeah, you think? Clarity.
Is the petitioner here present? Please come forward. State your name and address. Thank you.
Daniel Sosa, 20940 Osborne Road, Lakeville.
Anything you'd like to add?
Not really. My wife, she's been wanting a porch in the back, and that's pretty much how we came across this.
How long have you lived there?
Probably going on 8 years.
How many?
8.
8 years. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This is now open to the public. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak against, or excuse me, anyone on Zoom?
No.
Anyone wishing to speak against this, please come forward from the audience. Seeing none, anyone on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
No. This discussion is now closed to the public. Any other questions, comments, or a motion? Yes, Abby?
Thank you. In reviewing the site plan with our council, there is a setback request to legalize the structures, 12 feet on both sides of the home and then 5 feet for the shed. Right, Carl?
No, it's both.
No,
it's the
12
east
was for the
side
east,
entirely.
5 is for the west.
5 is for the west.
That's not what was advertised. They're both on the east side.
Oh, they both say east. Ooh.
And I think based on the site plan, they are both on the east side, aren't they?
Well, they both need to be legalized anyway.
Right, but my question was is why was it not just one variance for 5 feet?
Because in the future, we don't want to, like, allow closer than the house.
Okay, and then in that case, if they are inclined to grant the variances, this one would be very important that it be a written commitment that it is subject to the specific site plan that was submitted. Because otherwise, you would just essentially be granting a variance to 5 feet.
For 5 feet.
Subject to the site plan that was submitted,
Yes.
right? Okay.
The site plan that exists, that was submitted and matches what's on the property today. Sorry, I think we interrupted the public hearing.
No, it was closed.
Okay. Like, I don't know,
Yeah,
it seemed like we
it's-
were coming in right at the end of it.
Yeah, we call for a motion.
Yeah, I was debating. So you all like intently,
I was trying to figure out how to word it.
okay.
I meant
Yeah.
to type it.
Well, Brandy then helped me. Donnie Ritzma, I'll make a motion that we approve the variance on the condition that it is approved in accordance with the site plan as submitted today.
Yes, in accordance with the site plan that was submitted and is currently exists on the property today.
As it currently exists on the property today.
Very good.
Lance Roush, second.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Ritzma?
Yes.
Mr. Roush?
Yes.
Mr. Hawley?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Based on the testimony presented here today, the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, after careful consideration, finds this variance is granted and will issue written findings of the facts.
Granted
subject
with the
to-
condition, yes.
Subject to,
The condition that it is in accordance with the site plan that was submitted and as the property exists today.
today. Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Randy,
Yes.
question on the next one. I have no problem participating, correct? Because I own 3 sides of it.
Thanks.
If you do not have any financial interest that would be affected and/or some sort of close personal relationship that could affect the appearance of your impartiality, if you believe you have no problems, you should be fine.
I have no problem.
Okay.
Okay, State Road 331, please.
Location, 62923 State Road 331 Highway. Owner, Craig Allen and Kathleen Moore and Elijah Beck Thuma. Requested action, variance from section 154.092 sub D to allow for a minimum side south yard building setback of 15 feet where 30 feet would be required to allow for the construction of a proposed accessory structure. Zoning A agricultural district, county.
Good afternoon. This is Carl Brown Grimm again, Area Plan Commission staff. So the petitioner here is looking to build an accessory garage on the south side of their property, which is located along State Road 331. The property is located in the A Ag District and is approximately half acre in size. I think it's 0.6 acres. So when the parcel was created in 2015, it was split from that farm field there. They did receive a side yard setback variance for the north lot line, but our understanding is the petitioner would prefer to place the garage on the south due to safety concerns being along, with respect to the flow of traffic along 331 there. Staff does recommend approval, given what seems to be a theme today of the abnormally small lot size for the ag district. Here's the street view of the property. Given the traffic of 331, it was actually pretty difficult to get a frontal view of the, so, anything. There's the north side of the property, which is currently being used to park vehicles. There's 331 looking south. Again, it's pretty busy when I went out. And that's directly across 331. You can see this property here has a few accessory structures. Here's the proposed site plan showing that 20 by 20 accessory structure, which is still set back 15 feet from that south property line. Finally, looking at straight law criteria, approval will not be injurious. The abutting property to the south is a field currently being farmed, as Lance knows. Sydney. The proposed encroachment on that 30 feet setback will not interfere with that operation, I would imagine. The use and value of the surrounding area would remain unchanged. Accessory garage structures like that are pretty common for those rural residential properties that are located in the area, and this proposal should not affect nearby property values as such. And then finally, staff does feel that the strict application of the ordinance would create practical difficulties in this case. Again, as we have seen in other cases today, that 30-foot setback restriction of the ag district is often cumbersome for properties that are significantly smaller than the intended lot size of the district. In this case, 0.6 acres is much smaller than the 20-acre standard. So the 30-foot setback significantly impacts the buildable area of the lot. And then on top of that, we have the safety issue concerns of how State Road 331 flows against the house. And if you have any other questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Do you know what the speed limit is there?
I believe it's 55 miles an hour.
55, wow. Hmm. Yeah.
It certainly does.
Yeah. I've got a question before we ask the petitioner to come up. Brandy, I didn't think about this, but now that we only have 4 board members present, should I announce that we only have 4 and anybody that wishes to put it off for next month can do that?
I would say it's not a legal requirement that you tell people that that's available. I think people could probably figure it out on their own, that you announced it at the beginning, that you didn't have a full board, and now you have fewer people. So,
Well, I was thinking of that lady with the fence, you know. There was, I was on the fence, so to speak, but.
I would say I think most people probably could have figured out that when Joe left, if they really felt concerned, that that would be the time that they would ask.
Okay. Okay, thank you. May we have the petitioner come forward and please your name and address? Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. Craig Moore, 21979 Jackson Road, South Bend. And as Mr. Schaefer said, he was the previous owner and we purchased the property last summer. And the house was adequate, 2-bedroom, 2-bath home, but outside we needed a place to secure vehicles and equipment for maintaining the yard and things. So that was the purpose for for asking for this variance so that we would have sufficient space for those.
Any questions here from the staff? Any questions?
I kind
Thank
of do for the staff, Bob. What, if any, concerns do we have for future septic placement on a lot that small? Especially given the position of the well.
Well, so those kind of get ironed out during this subdivision process. The health department reviews it and they make sure that there's enough space for the size of the home for the septic, and then they also require a reserve area, is my understanding.
Okay.
So there's two.
So we're going to assume that that happened?
When was
And
this
that it's
home?
not where
It
we're
was
trying to
split
put the
in
garage?
2015, I believe.
2015?
Yes.
Well, if it was built in 2015, it's probably got,
Oh, I'm not sure when the home was built. The land was split in 2015.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
do you know when it was built?
52.
It probably has a dry well then.
Has a standard septic.
Oh, it does?
Has a standard.
Yeah, I mean, I might be wrong.
Then there's room for another one, yes.
Yeah, oh, good, okay.
They would have required that in 2015 that be replaced, if
Yeah.
that was the case.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. We'll now open this up to the public. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor? Please come forward. Anyone on Zoom that would like to speak in favor?
Nobody on Zoom.
Anyone in the room that would like to speak against this proposal, please come forward. Seeing none, anyone on Zoom that would like to speak against?
Nobody on Zoom.
This is now closed to the public. Any other questions or concerns by the staff or the board or the attorney? Let's call for the motion.
Donnie Ritzma, I'll make a motion that we approve the variance as requested.
Lance Roush, second.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Ritzma?
Yes.
Mr. Roush?
Yes.
Mr. Hawley?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Based on the testimony presented here today, the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, after careful consideration, finds this variance is granted and will issue written findings of the facts. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your patience. Laurel Road.
Location 52248 Laurel Road. Owner, Unity of Michiana, Inc. Requested action, variance number 1 from section 154.107, sub C 2, to allow a side north yard setback of 10 feet where 20 feet is required for a classroom trailer. Zoning R Single Family District, County.
Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff. So almost exactly a year ago, this board granted this exact variance. There were some delays during the permitting process, so that variance has now expired. And unfortunately, your bylaws don't allow for any sort of extension or renewal currently, so a new variance had to be requested. Staff recommends approval for the variance for the same reasons that you approved it a year ago. Turning to the state law criteria, we find that having a classroom trailer within 10 feet of a residential property does not have any impact on public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. We find that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. As it was established last year, that the classroom will only be used for a maximum of 4 hours per week, and there's also some decent screening from that property as well, landscape-wise. And turning to the third criteria, we found that the strict application will result in practical difficulties, as meeting the 20-foot setback would either mean that the ramp for the trailer wouldn't line up properly with the door, meaning there'd be more distance between the exit and the ramp. Additionally, it would take up off-street parking spaces that the church needs. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Sean, I do remember this petition last year, but I don't remember fully the variance as worded. What was approved? Was there any conditions?
There were no conditions with it, no.
Okay.
So it was just from the 20 to 10 feet.
Okay.
Sean,
Thank
did the holdup with state have anything to do with what we're?
The petitioner would probably know that better than I would, but it was something related to permitting.
Any other questions? May we have the presentation by the petitioner, please? State your name and address.
Timothy Simpson, 2516 Lakeshore Drive, Niles, Michigan. I am on the Board of Trustees for the church. And yes, Sean did explain that there was some delays in the communication process between the planning and review. They have 30 days to reply to each of the requests for information that they ask us for. And some days they waited till day 29 to give us a response. Additionally, there was some redundancy. They kept asking for much of the same information over and over and then failed to respond in a timely manner. And that was the reason for the delay, that we were not able to obtain the permit within the 6-month time frame.
Thank you, that's good. Any other questions or concerns by any? Okay. We'll now open this up to the public. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak in favor of this? Please come forward. Anyone on Zoom that would like to speak in favor?
Nobody on Zoom.
Is there anyone in this room that would like to speak against this approval? Seeing none, anyone on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
Okay, we'll now move on. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this seems like one of those technical issues that we run into from time to time, based on the fact that we had already passed this after, in my recollection, quite a bit of discussion in deliberation. I move that we approve the variance as written today.
Donnie Ritzmel, second.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Roush?
Yes.
Mr. Ritzma?
Yes.
Mr. Hawley?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Based on the testimony presented here today, the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, after careful consideration, finds this variance is granted and will issue written findings of the facts. Thank you, sir, for your patience. Thank you. Abby, I don't know, maybe I'm out of place by asking this, but I'll ask it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can I
Yes.
ask it?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you doing?
The lead up is
Well,
intriguing.
okay, you talked about maybe streamlining this particular
Oh,
situation.
yeah. Would you like me to go over that in, under other business?
Okay,
Is that okay?
sure,
All right.
thank you. So you're gonna have to wait now.
So we'll take,
All about it.
Okay, let's see. I think we're now to finding of the facts, approval of the, yeah, let's see, approval.
Donnie's usually our quality control person.
Can I just go ahead and say a motion, like, as the quality control person, I make a motion that we approve the findings of facts from June 14th meeting.
Can we just go with yes or yay? Yay or
Yes,
nay?
we don't have anyone on Zoom, so you can do a voice vote, right, Brandy?
All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Oh, did we have a second?
I thought I heard one, but I might
Oh.
have misheard, I might have made that up in my.
Lance Roush, second.
Okay.
Because I trust quality control.
So,
All right.
so we do have a second, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what else.
Minutes.
We have some minutes, I think, too. Yeah, yes, we do.
May 10th.
We have minutes for,
May 10th.
May 10th. You're right, May the 10th. Okay. Minutes approval.
Quality control here.
Yes. Amen.
We need quality control.
Adult supervision.
Donnie Ritz, I make a motion that we approve the minutes for the May 10th, 2023 meeting.
Sid Schaefer, second.
We now have a motion and a second to approve those minutes of May 10th, 2023. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Passed 4-0. Okay, now I think we're other business.
All right. So we are still working on the text amendment for fences. Sean and I are overcomplicating it, and Carl said to just cut it off. But we, you know, one thing changes, and then another thing changes that, and there's unintended consequences. So we're working on it.
We'll have it.
Right, Sean?
Yeah.
The other thing that we talked about with Bob and Brandy before the meeting started today is we have the repeat for Unity Church today, but then we also have another variance that's been filed that you just heard that expired. So what I've seen in other jurisdictions, and Brandy says it's fine, we can do it, is a change to your rules of procedure that would allow you all to approve a 6-month extension administratively during other business like this. So if someone hasn't gotten their permit, hasn't submitted for plan review, they would contact one of us and say, hey, I'd like to request a 6-month extension, and then you all could approve it under other business, not like a new
On the
variance.
condition of justifiable means?
Yeah, so like why, are you having trouble obtaining your construction design release? Did you not, are you having trouble securing a contractor, or whatever other reason, building materials, et cetera?
Right. I just hate for people to just be like, I just want to do
So.
this because.
So I did this for one of the other communities I worked for, and we requested something from them in writing.
Good.
Via email was fine. So we would say, you need to send a request to us via email with a brief explanation. Most of the time, it would be like 2 sentences. And then we would put that actual request in the packet under other business, request for 6-month extension, the address, what was requested. And then you all would vote on it.
Abby, since we're on this topic, I've always felt like 6 months is randomly short. Is there a reason that we don't do it for a year? Because aren't building permits usually for a year? I'm just curious why, or if there's a reason. It may just be just because that's what we always did.
Sean and I, do you remember we looked at that? And there's
Yeah.
we think there's language in our ordinance.
I think there's definitely something in the ordinance.
Because in the current business climate, 6 months
Yeah, it's
flies
nothing.
by. You know, you're waiting on, you might be waiting 6 months to get a topo survey.
Yeah.
That's where it is in the rules.
Because I am.
Yeah.
Because I am.
I think it's Randy.
Well, it's just, it's a thing, and every time I see that in our findings of fact, or, you know, when we're talking about this, it's like 6 months is fast.
Oh, that's what it was.
The letter said a
The
year.
letter, so there was a discrepancy between our approval letter and the ordinance. That was corrected.
Clarify,
Our letter said 12 months and it was really 6 months.
okay?
That was corrected.
What would be involved with changing it to 12 months, I guess would be the ultimate question.
It's 12 months in our bylaws, right? Or I mean, 6 months in our bylaws.
Yeah.
It's 6 months.
Lawyers love whiteouts, yeah, that's, yeah. Just scratch it out initially.
So you're saying now don't even do the 6-month extension, just change the bylaws to a year?
I'm just
Okay.
throwing it out there, why not? 6 months, make life simpler.
We wouldn't have been here today.
I guess, I'm
With
trying to
that.
think of a scenario where there, how that could cause harm. And I can't.
Well, it wouldn't cause harm, but it does cause an inconvenience, because everything he was doing got put on hold
No,
till
I'm
he came
saying
back.
if we made it 12 months.
Oh, yeah.
How would that be a
Well,
problem?
the only thing I would think of that jumps out in my mind from the standpoint of the purchaser, or not purchaser,
The owner?
the owner that's requesting it, it would kind of put him in a, well, I got a whole year to do this rather than 6 months. So psychologically, it might be something that would affect him.
You know you have to go through the process again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if she's saying what she's saying, then it wouldn't come to us. It would just come to them, and it would be brought up here, and we would just yay or nay, right?
So a perfect example, one of the petitions, and I will just say what it is because it's filed. It's that fence for the self-storage off 23.
Behind the Martins, that's
Aha.
And Donnie, you
I
asked
asked
a lot
that
of
question.
questions about that. So that's coming back. And, you know, they talked with Carl, they talked with me, and we both advised them that they needed to come back. If we had that in the bylaws, we would just say, send us a request, and we'd bring it to you all. They would have to request it before it expired.
What triggered that? How did anyone even know it was expired? They finally went to pull the permit, and the building
They-
department caught it? Because it seems like a lot of this stuff falls on the poor girls at the counter at the building department to police this stuff.
No, in that case, the petitioner was aware that his variance expired.
Wow.
We do have a provision in here for them to ask for permission
Sure.
for continuance.
But I'm thinking of, so for those, it's easy, right? Because those guys know and they're on top of it. But for, you know, the guy who's doing his garage, he may
Okay.
or may not get to that in 6 months. He ain't gonna know to come back.
No, I don't.
Just a thought. What'd you find, Brandy?
What was it on again? What was
Yeah,
the
but once he pulls the
property?
permit, it's.
We have a provision in that same, that's the rule that says it expires in 6 months. It says unless specific permission for continuance of the variance is granted by the board. I think what made us get confused, we previously had one that was like right at 6 months. It wouldn't, that we said that they would have to have made the request before it was gonna
Yeah, that was
expire.
that one. He waited until after it already expired, so that's why we couldn't have.
That you'd have to continue it, they'd have to be able to be heard by
Before
the
the-
board before the 6 months was up.
Right.
So we could interpret our bylaw, our current bylaws as bringing it to them for continuance. It doesn't
Yes.
specify how long, though.
Well, I think that would be, the board could just say how long they want it, but
6 months is, I think
6
6
months
months
seems like a
is
reasonable amount of
appropriate.
time, but I think that's why we suddenly got the idea that it couldn't be done, was because we had the one where they were already
Because the 6
outside the
months
6
already,
months.
exactly, yeah.
And so
yeah.
it had just expired.
That's what it was.
Okay, how about this? I'll do some research on what other jurisdictions around us are doing, whether it's 6 months or 12, and we'll bring you something next month. Either a revision to the bylaws to increase it to 12, if that's consistent with what other folks are doing, or we'll just begin interpreting our bylaws as you all can grant a continuance, and we'll recommend 6 months.
Is there some sort of like due diligence or quality control that these people are hitting what they need to before 6 months or 12 months? Or we're just trusting that they know what they're supposed to do and we'll get it done before 6 months?
There's only so much we can really expect staff to be doing to handhold
Well, not necessarily staff, but like, I don't
Well,
know,
who
somebody
else
help
are
me here,
gonna
but I feel like there should be
Yeah.
somebody.
So, like-
I feel like I've asked this question a
Here,
dozen times.
here's what happens. Let's, and I know that it's a little murky, but sundown last month, cut the eaves off to meet the setback requirement. I then asked Carl,
That was the one
Twice.
with the garage, right?
yeah, put a note in the system for the building department, so the compliance inspector, when she goes out, she knows that she needs to check that it's cut down. So it's on, Shelley also, when Shelley, as soon as we're done and after meeting letters are approved, a copy goes into our property database that the building department then references. So building permits are granted in accordance with the after meeting letter. And what goes on the after meeting letter is exactly what you all approve. And if there are conditions like you assigned today, we then review, Shelley drafts it and we review it to make sure that the wording is all on the after meeting letter.
So that kind of gives it a red tag to the building department?
Correct. And for something like Sundown, where it is like unclear, I thought it was unclear. I mean, what you granted for the variance forced them to cut it down. But it might not have been clear for an inspector that's going back out in the field. So we made sure to communicate to the building department that needed to happen.
Okay, so on that one where it was pretty hotly contested or whatever your terminology is, a lot of discussion, you do sort of keep an eye on those. Because that's come, I mean, people have asked me since they know I'm doing this, they're like, yeah, well, what happens if I don't? I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, that is,
Maybe nothing.
admittedly, that's a legitimate concern. We do our best to follow up. And there's one that you all denied that we just talked about sending a letter. Carl gets it. Where we are gonna enforce what you denied. Not everybody follows the rules. In this case, it was a fence denial, a height. How I don't think you were on. Do you remember Akita attack dogs?
Yes.
He never brought his fence into compliance. Done. Come on, done. 31.
Where was it?
Sorry.
He wanted the fence height because he worked cybersecurity. And he had 6 Akita attack dogs that could
And
jump
his-
the 6-foot fence.
And his children.
Yes.
He had to protect his children from child molesters.
Yes, it was quite.
That was clearly stated. in the
Bob,
application.
you made the motion, I think, one of the motions.
Wow.
I think you remember. It was quite unusual.
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. He never brought his fence into compliance. We just talked this morning about one of us taking it up. Poor Carl. He wasn't even here when he got it.
Okay, but I guess it's cool that you guys are doing that because otherwise it's like, what's the point?
We just talked about one on Vistula
Yes.
with Bob, right?
The one that I gave you, the garage, they didn't pull the permit for the house yet, and the 1-year condition is passed, so.
I'm gonna send my own zoning violation letter. They make me do it sometimes too.
Those are for like specific condition ones, right? But for not condition ones, if they get the variance, when they go to pull the permit, it is checked that it's been less than 6 months, right?
Yeah. Because they'll have to look at the variance letter to show that they got the variance, and then they'll see the date, and they look for that.
Anything else, Abby?
So why would those people come here, seek a variance, but then never do anything with it?
That's a good question.
I can't say that that's unique. I've seen that at other jurisdictions too.
It's a waste of time, our time, and it's just stupid.
People die, plants fall through.
Yeah, think of all the,
Well, like solar panels on Miami,
All right.
they never got put in.
yeah.
It's just, life
A lot of times
happens.
people come to the counter and I tell them they need a variance, never hear from them again.
You weren't here for that.
No.
All right.
Yeah, remember that. They never got put in.
Never got put in.
Oh, well, they'll have to come
Anything
back.
else,
They want
Abby?
'em.
I thought it was a crazy place to put them, but.
So so like today, the guy with the guy that was remonstrating against the fence, that fences are ugly and boxing in and whatever, his recourse, so to speak, would be code enforcement going forward if the fence falls in disrepair.
No,
Right.
there's nothing in code that addresses structures, fences, accessory structures, peeling paint. Code enforcement has 3 ordinances: abandoned vehicle, public nuisance, and weed and rank, which public nuisances like litter, trash, tires, scrap metal, other nuisance material.
So if the fence like literally fell apart into pieces on the ground, code could maybe do something about that.
Because the grass is growing up through it or something. Wow.
You know, it is funny though. I have seen language in other ordinances about fences needing to be maintained in good repair. I'm a little scared to put that forward because I can't imagine the complaints that we would get. And I wrote myself a note to talk to these two about it, but I don't know if it's something that we'd want to take up.
How are you, yeah, you'd have to define good repair really well.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
I have a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. Second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
That guy didn't really live that close. That was an interesting cause for him to take up.